Don't worry, if I was sitting there, it'd be even worse than that. Okay. Charles,
Yes.
are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, call special meeting of the zoning hearing board to order. This is the October date for this special hearing. Members of the board who are present this evening, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Luce, Mr. Kyle is on Zoom, myself. Also for the record, you're far right, we have our legal counsel, Jason Hess. We have our zoning officer, Beth Graham. We also have with us this evening a court reporter. The board minutes are taken by Judy, who is on Zoom. And with that, we have just the special case has been before us and will continue to this evening. No other items are on the agenda. The board will hear this case as it has in an informal manner without strict compliance with rules and procedures used in a court trial. We ask that the applicant and any individuals interested in this case step in front of our table and explain the circumstances involved in the application. Applicants in this case are represented by their attorneys and other witnesses. Fellow board members and I, as well as our solicitor, may ask the applicant questions from time to time during the applicant's presentation or at its conclusion. All persons having an interest in the application will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, to offer evidence on their own, and inform the board of their position on the matter. In an interest of a prompt and orderly disposition of the case, we ask that interested people to refrain from speaking until the applicant's presentation has been completed and the board has had the opportunity to question the applicant. People who have in the past, I don't see anyone in the audience this evening, an interest in the case, desire to be parties were made available to them. Persons who are parties to the case will be entitled to receive notice of the decision of the case and will be entitled to participate in a subsequent appeal or rehearing. Individuals who are not given party status may nonetheless ask questions and present evidence, but will not receive notice of the decision and will not automatically be entitled to participate in any appeal or subsequent rehearing. Although each party will receive a written copy of the decision, mechanics and typing and signing the decision will take approximately 4 weeks from the conclusion of the testimony. We ask that each person who asks a question or makes a statement first state his or her name and address for the court reporter. In the interest of time, I'll administer the oath of affirmation to the applicant and to anyone and everyone who anticipates making any statement with respect to the hearing this evening. So at this time, will you all rise, please? Under penalties of perjury, you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please stay standing. The rest of us stand and salute the flag. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Beth, this case has been advertised and posted in accordance with the Sunshine Law and the MPC.
It has been.
Okay. Gentlemen, you should have received the board minutes of September 19th, 2024. As presented to us by our secretary and as taken by Jude. If no one has any additions, deletions, or corrections, I would ask for a motion to approve the board minutes of September 19, 2024. Moved by Mr. Hanson. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion, gentlemen? Seeing none. Mr. Hanson.
In favor.
Mr. Lewis. In favor. Mr. Kyle.
In favor.
And I'll also vote in favor. The board minutes of September 19, 2024 have been approved by a 4-0 vote. Okay. I don't see anything else, so Beth, would you like to call the case, please?
Case number 2476, Holbrook Associates Manager LLC filed a substantive validity challenge pursuant to 916.1A1 of the PA Municipalities Planning Code relating to its property at Tenby Way, parcel number 290-516-540-0000, located in the medium density residential zone, claiming the zoning ordinance unlawfully excludes high density multifamily dwellings.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Mr. Hess?
Okay, thank you. So, just to start things off, as you will recall, there was an evidentiary issue brought up that was discussed at last meeting, at the last month's meeting, and counsel for the applicant had made a request for a reconsideration of the board chairman's decision on the expert qualification of Mr. Samuels for fiscal impact analysis. At the last month's hearing, counsel for the township had requested a chance to respond to the memo submitted by Mr. Nagel, and Ms. Piper did submit a memo on 2 weeks ago on October 3rd, and the board has had an opportunity to review the memos, and I've also had some conversations with board members on the legalities of the issues raised, and based on those conversations, I believe that the board is prepared to make a decision on that request.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Go ahead.
On the request by the applicant, Colebrook Associates Venture LLC, to reconsider the rulings stated by Board Chairman at the July 18, 2024 hearing, do not qualify Michael Samuels as an expert in fiscal impact analysis, and make a motion to reverse the ruling and to certify Mr. Samuels as an expert in fiscal impact analysis, and to allow Mr. Samuels to testify on the reports introduced to the board as exhibits A42 and A43, and give such testimony the way it deserves, such that the board will disregard any irrelevant testimony.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Lewis. Discussions, gentlemen. Seeing.
I'll just make a statement on that. So I think that the board and the reason for reconsidering this and the motion that was made is that in an abundance of caution that the board wants to give both sides opportunities to or not deprive either side of an opportunity to present any relevant testimony that they may have. And so I think that the motion is made to allow the testimony, to give it the weight it deserves. And to be clear, would be qualified in fiscal impact analysis. He's already been qualified as an expert in the other areas in which he was offered. And the fiscal impact analysis would be basically regarding the factors that the board is supposed to consider under section 916.1 of the MPC in making a decision on the substantive validity challenge and any recommendations it would have to make to the board. So basically it was, it's to make sure that there's not depriving either side of the ability to enter any relevant testimony, although it may consider parts of the reports to not be relevant. So that was, if there was anything else.
Yeah, a couple, so the board will decide what's relevant, not relevant, I'm sure. Despite rule, John and these things, something is not relevant, we at that point decide what's relevant or not.
Anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay. Gentlemen, heard the motion and second on the reconsideration. As an expert witness. Mr. Hanson, how do you do?
In favor.
Mr. Luce? In favor. Mr. Kyle?
In favor.
And I will also vote in favor. So the motion carries. I just want to make one statement there that what Mr. Hanson stated for the rationale, I totally agree with that. We have to weigh the information that's presented and go from there. So with that, I presume then we're back to Mr. Nagel.
Thank you. The applicant will continue with the testimony of Mr. Samuels based on the board's ruling.
One second. Judy, can you hear? Yeah. Can you hear Mr. Nagel?
Yes, he's very clear.
Thank you. Continue.
Mr. Samuels, good evening. Can you please explain what sources you rely on in preparing a fiscal impact study?
We rely on a wide range of resources that are necessary to conduct fiscal impact. There were a series of books. The nation's leading expert on fiscal impact is the Center for Urban Policy Research at Rutgers University. They published a book in the 70s related to fiscal impact called the Fiscal Impact Handbook. They followed it up with the Practitioner's Guide to Fiscal Impact, and then the New Practitioner's Guide for Fiscal Impact. And they pretty much set the tone for how fiscal impact studies would be conducted in the United States. The Urban Land Institute has a publication on fiscal impact analysis. Then there are a whole variety of others chiming in, including a gentleman, Tim Kelsey, who's a professor at Penn State, and provided and wrote a pamphlet, as guidebook for municipalities in Pennsylvania on how to analyze fiscal impact. So we use those. Those are the books that provide the framework of the methodology that should be applied. And then there are some key elements in the application of those methodology that need to be updated over time. That is, the number of people living in a household, broken down by the type of residence, ownership, or rental, single family, multifamily. And those inputs are updated on a periodic basis mostly by the people at Rutgers University, but there are others who have put out have done additional studies on that, including Montgomery County, Pennsylvania did their own study as to how many, because they were concerned about the number of residents, the number of school-age children that are being introduced in the school districts by new housing development. And so professionals around the country take note of all of these new inputs. And then in the conduct and the application of the methodology, we're very much dependent upon the budgets of the municipality that we're studying, the budgets of the school district that we're studying, and an analysis of those, the tax structure of the municipality or the school district. And also sometimes we measure fiscal impacts on a county level as well. And in this case, we used a hybrid of methodologies. The per capita methodology is a calculation of costs and revenues either per capita or per household basis. And then in the blended part of this is that we also use proportional valuation. And what the proportional valuation methodology does, it helps understand the municipal service costs and how it is affected by the proportion of commercial properties versus residential properties within the municipal boundaries. There is research that shows that higher intensity, the development of on the commercial side has a large impact on the costs that municipalities incur to manage the municipality and provide services. So that proportional valuation method allows us to adjust for relative levels of commercial development from municipality to municipality, and also the relationship between that commercial development and the value of that commercial development versus the relative value of residences within the municipality.
I'm showing you a document marked 849 for identification. Can you identify that document?
Yes, it's a bibliography of resources that we use or have used on fiscal impact studies. You can see that the top three of them were the seminal publications on fiscal impact in the United States: the Fiscal Impact Handbook, the Practitioner's Guide, the Fiscal Impact Analysis, and the New Practitioner's Guide. And then also, and they were all written by the people at the Center for Urban Policy Research at Rutgers. And then, two publications down, I also had mentioned that the Urban Land Institute had done their own development impact assessment handbook. But you can see, while it's published by the Urban Land Institute, it's written by one of the same professors from Rutgers who wrote all the other books. Everything else beneath that are indications of the inputs to those analysis methods as to the population, the impacts of new development, the number of school-aged children that are created, that follow along with new development. And also the number of, school-aged children that are educated in, public institutions as opposed to are either homeschooled or, are educated in a private setting. And so these are a summary of, the most recent and most popular publications for our use in conducting fiscal impact analysis.
And you prepared A49?
Yes, I did.
Did you prepare fiscal impact studies relative to the application that's before the Board of Supervisors?
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, the zoning hearing board?
Yes, no offense to the Board of Supervisors.
And the sources on A49 that you relied on are cited in those reports, is that right?
Yes, correct. Wherever we have a resource as an input to our methodology is cited in our reports.
And are the resources that you've listed on A49, the resources that you've identified in your fiscal impact reports, which we'll get into in a few minutes?
Pretty much, other than.
No, let me finish my question, Mr. Samuels. I'm sorry. Are the resources that you've cited on A49 and the resources that are cited in your fiscal impact reports resources that are frequently relied upon by you and other experts in preparing fiscal impact studies?
Yes,
And would you agree that reliance on those sources is standard practice for authors of fiscal impact studies?
yes, it is.
While you're getting there, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On A49, I did notice that the first three books that you have listed there are 46, 44, and 39 years old. Have they been updated, or are we using technology that old to figure this stuff out?
It's not technology, it's a methodology.
Methodology.
Yes, that's correct.
So we're using 46-year-old methodology to figure out something today.
It's not like finding a 46-year-old car. It's a step-by-step instruction as to how it should be done. And over time, there are tweaks, and over time, there are methodologies developed to accommodate special situations. But the bulk of the methodology is consistent. It has been.
Thank you.
I'm showing you an exhibit marked 850. You identify what that is?
Yes, sir. It is section 10916.1, validity of ordinance. Some following substantive questions from the municipalities planning code of Pennsylvania.
And could you read section C5 on page 2 of that document.
This is the section beginning based upon the testimony.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5, based upon the testimony presented at the hearing or hearings, the governing body or the zoning board, as the case may be, shall determine whether the challenged ordinance or map is defective as alleged by the landowner. If the challenge heard by a governing body is found to have merit, the governing body shall proceed as provided in section 609.1. If a challenge heard by a zoning hearing board is found to have merit, the decision of the zoning hearing board shall include recommended amendments to the challenged ordinance which will cure the defects found. In reaching its decision, the zoning hearing board shall consider the amendments, plans, and explanatory material submitted by the landowner and shall also consider 1, subsection 1, the impact of the proposal on roads, sewer facilities, water supplies, schools, and other public service facilities. Subsection 2, if the proposal is for a residential use, the impact of the proposal upon regional housing needs and the effectiveness of the proposal in providing housing units of a type actually available to and affordable by classes of persons otherwise unlawfully excluded by the challenged provisions of the ordinance or map.
You can stop there. Thank you. Do fiscal impact studies, including those which you prepared in this matter, address the fiscal impact of the proposed use on schools and the municipality and their facilities?
Yes, it does.
And so for that reason, that's why the fiscal impact information is important and relevant for the board's consideration in this case. Is that your opinion?
That's correct.
Do you recall any questions raised by the board during your testimony?
It was, I think, from the first hearing that when Mr. Cassidy was testifying, he was asked by Mr. Hanson about fiscal impact.
And did you analyze the fiscal impact of the development of the balance of the Colebrook property in the event that my client is successful in this application?
Yes, it did.
Fresh my memory here.
They already have them.
I did remember asking that question, but I think the fiscal impact pertained to the applicant and not to the township. What, by going with a larger density, what was the fiscal impact on the applicant, not on the township?
I'm showing you an exhibit mark 842. Could you identify that? And I think that was already provided to everybody, but if anybody needs another copy, we can provide that.
It was withdrawn, correct.
But 42 and 43, we have not seen yet.
Should you give a copy to everybody?
Hold on.
So we provided a copy to everybody. At this,
You'll be tried tonight.
yes,
Yeah, because you withdrew it,
Yeah, you're right, it was withdrawn.
it was withdrawn. You made the initial
understood,
that he was not qualified,
understood.
so you withdrew it.
Can you identify 842, Mr. Samuels?
842 is a cover letter to a fiscal impact study for the proposed public apartments, the expansion and new construction of apartments on 27 currently vacant acres of land.
And
27,
and
53 total, 27 currently vacant.
and so the cover letter is 2 pages, correct?
Yes.
And how about beyond the cover letter as part of 842?
It is a fiscal impact study. 14 pages from beginning to, from the beginning of the report to the beginning of the addendum. In the addendum, there are 2 pages of charts, calculations, showing the background of the impact study, and then followed by a certification and a statement of qualifications.
So is it fair to say that 842 is the cover letter that goes with the fiscal impact study and the fiscal impact study itself
Yes, that's what,
and the attachments that go with it?
yes.
And what does the fiscal impact study that's part of 842 address?
It addresses the fiscal impact to the municipality and the school district if the 27 acres were developed with apartments. That's what the fiscal impact study addresses. The cover letter addresses a summary of the fiscal impact for 2 alternative development scenarios. One, the apartments, as had been approved in the early 70s for an additional 371 apartment units. And then secondly, for the development of the 27 acres with single-family detached dwellings at the currently permitted density of 4 units to the acre, or 108 single-family dwellings.
Can you review the analysis of your fiscal impact study for the board and the conclusions that you make as a result of it?
Yes, the important conclusions are that for the single-family development, both for the single-family and multi-family development, there is a positive fiscal impact. With regard to the school district, the development of the property with apartments generates a $400,000 per year fiscal benefit to the school district. And with single family development, it has a negative $360,000 annual fiscal impact on the school district. And what that basically means is that if apartments are constructed, the township has an overall net benefit, and the school district has a net benefit to the point where either they can expand services because of it's a positive net, or they could lessen any real estate tax mill rate increases or decrease the real estate tax bill rate if they so choose to do that. With the single family detached development, the school district would have to absorb $360,000 loss for educating those students, or they could increase taxes to cover that deficit.
So, ask a quick question here. Based strictly on, multifamily and single family. What about single family 55 or older?
55 and over single family development, the benefit to the school district would be positive in both events. Both the school district and the township derive a significant amount of revenue from the earned income tax. I don't know how the earned income tax applies to investment earnings. So if it's purely earned in from employment, then in an equitable community, as the community ages and their shift from earned income to investment income, I think the benefits to both the school district and the township would wane from that point of view. But the school district benefits far greater from the real estate tax than the earned income tax. But the school district would benefit greatly.
So when you're saying that there's a strong positive benefit, you're taking into account both earned income tax and real estate tax, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Samuels, I showed you A42, correct?
You done, Mr. Haynes?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I have a follow-up question.
May I please clarify something before you ask that question,
Please.
Mr. Chairman? I showed you A42, correct?
Yes,
And A42 is a cover letter and the fiscal impact analysis that pertains to the apartments, correct?
yes.
I'm showing you A43. What is that document?
That is fiscal impact study for the potential development of 108 single family detached residences on the 27A.
And the cover letter was the submission of both reports, correct?
That's it.
And so I've marked them separately as A42 for the cover letter and the Colebrook apartment fiscal impact analysis and study. And I've marked A43 as the second report, which is single family and fiscal impact study, correct? Just wanted to clarify that, Mr. Herr.
That's fine.
Okay.
Look at the school district's fiscal impact. What figure did you use for the cost per student for the Hempfield school districts?
The cost per student net of it would be $17,600 per student. In addition, the school district receives almost $5,700 per student in state and federal revenue sharing. That's based on that shy of $7 in student enrollment.
Go ahead. I'm looking.
Mr. Nichol, just out of curiosity, As we go through this, Mr. Sanders is gonna be available later on. If we have any follow-up, or can we submit them through Attorney Hess to you to get an answer of our questions?
I think the problem with that, Mr. Hanson, is that if he's not actually here to be cross-examined by the township, then I mean, if he's able to come back, I guess that's one thing, but I mean, questions that he would just be answering without cross-examination from the
I
township.
mean, there's substantial amount of information in here. And going through this, I'm sure later on, there may be some follow-up questions, so he will be available later on.
Mr. Hanson, I don't have an objection to that, but Mr. Samuels will walk you through the information in the reports. And that probably will give you the opportunity to ask most of the questions you would have, and that might eliminate that issue.
Okay.
So why don't we proceed and I don't know if Mr. Herr has any other questions before I do.
No, I might come back to this, although I'm more concerned about the township impact and what happens in the township. But with the school district, I'm concerned about with the number of potential students and the cost for potential students and the potential revenues that would be raised, whether there is a plus or minus annual impact with the school district. So hold that till a little later.
Very well. Mr. Samuels, could you please go through the Colebrook Apartments fiscal impact study? Run through that report for the board, and then also please do the same for the single family detached development report, which is 843.
Let me just object. Are you gonna ask questions or are we just opening it up to have him broadly testify?
I can ask questions, but the questions are going to be,
Well, I think just to create some order so we can see where, I think it would be helpful to the board if his testimony would track through the report as opposed to just having him testify freely. I would just ask that we have some procedure here, some format, keep things in line.
I mean, I would agree that it'd be helpful to have some questions along the way and instead of just saying, go from the beginning to the end of your report.
no, I have no issue with asking questions as we go through. So in the beginning of your fiscal impact for the apartments, you have an executive summary and you have a chart in there. Can you explain what that is and what that means?
Several parts, it's actually pages 1 through 4 of all of those. We start off with, on the 27 acres, the number of apartments that the site can accommodate. And we had to analyze from the marketplace what that typically unit mix would be of the 371 units. So this is the chart on page 1. So our analysis was based on this mix of 22 studio units, 174 one bedroom, 163 bedroom, and 15 3 bedroom, with a range of sizes presented and a conclusion of market rent for each of those unit types based on the size and the location. That was all derived from an analysis of the marketplace and a survey of a variety of apartment complexes in the area, and those are summarized on page 2.
And so the numbers in the chart on page 1 came from Colebrook.
Came from the marketplace
Okay.
as to if the marketplace were going to develop 371 units on 27 acres, what the likely mix of those units would be, the likely sizes and the market rents for those units.
And then the chart on page 2,
Shows some of the information that we gathered in the marketplace to provide with those conclusions. Three Corner Apartments, Riverside Foundry, Crossings, Eclipse, and so forth. And the marketplace tells us what that mix of units might be. It's a combination of location, it's a combination of the age of the complex, and we look at trends in the marketplace to see what those trends are in terms of unit sizes and unit mixes.
and all of the marketplace projects that you looked at on page 2 are local projects in this locality.
Correct.
Sunil, can I ask a question? I'm a little bit confused about the 371 units because in the cover letter, I think it was referred to 371 apartment units as what was previously approved. That's in the cover, and then in the actual study itself, it says it proposes to develop a vacant land with 371 units. So when you refer to this 371 units previously approved, do you mean back in like the 80s or whatever,
Back in the 70s.
70s? Okay, so what's currently proposed is not exactly the same as what was approved back then.
What was presented to the board at the last session was not available to me at the time that
I see.
I prepared this.
I see. Okay.
But the impacts are proportional. It's relatively easy to adjust based on varying numbers of units.
All right. Thank you.
So, Mr. Samuels, being the fact that this is based on the existing apartments now there, if the board were to eventually approve the applicant's request, would the rates that you have indicated in the far right column there, under Hempfield,
But Mr. Hanson, I'm sorry, what page are you on?
page 2,
Okay, thank you.
would they go up to match what's currently there on the other units if they exist, or would they? I can't believe that you're going to offer a brand new apartment, 1 bedroom for $1,500.
That is, it's $1,500 to $1,700 per unit is what is being offered in the marketplace currently.
Okay. So the new, if this was approved, we'd be somewhere between that $1,500 and $1,700 range.
Most likely, yes.
Okay, and same with the 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, maybe in that approximate range also.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So what would the adjustment be based on what was proposed the last session during Mr. Best's testimony?
It's pretty much just a percentage reduction, a reduction. If it was 10% like fewer units, it would be a 10% reduction in the positive or negative impacts.
So in that respect, if the applicant asked for 342 units to cure the defect in the township's ordinance, and if the zoning hearing board agreed with that, and the zoning hearing board decided that 300 units would cure that defect, you would just simply make the percentage difference adjustment between the 300 and the 342?
Sure.
Is it the same case if the board decided that 500 units was the proper cure?
Same thing.
Increase by that equivalent, by that percentage, the difference between 500 and 342?
The only difference would be if there was a different mix of units. Studio 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 3 bedroom. It's a number of occupants, the number of children, when a public school generates a negative impact, greater negative impact for the township, and is a drag on the fiscal income for the school district as well.
So for the plan that the applicant presented with 308 units, you would do the same math essentially, the difference between 308 and 371 as a percentage, and then you would reduce the numbers by that percentage.
So as long as the unit mix stays consistent, the percentage mix, yes, those numbers would stay consistent.
On page 3 of your report, you review the property assessments and the real estate tax. What are the implications of those numbers and your analysis of those?
The 0.7 acre portion of the property is currently assessed at $1,035,000. And currently generates real estate taxes for the township of $1,046 and the school district $18,000 for a total of $19,000 in real estate taxes on an annual basis. With the proposed improvements, the real estate taxes would increase from $1,000 to the township to almost $35,000 per year. The school district from $18,000 to $604,000 per year. So the net increase to both the school district and township would be approximately $619,000 per year.
And that would be for the 371 units?
That would be for the 371 units.
Is the same math applicable that the tax, the real estate tax increase would be proportionately less or proportionately more as you increase and decrease the units?
Correct. 20% less would decrease the real estate benefits, the real estate taxes by $130,000 thereabouts. So that the benefit would be $498,000 or so.
Are the
$600,000.
Are the impacts different from unit type to unit type?
Yes,
Did you study that?
it did. Now, I did that because the real estate taxes aren't going to vary by unit type. The real estate taxes are the real estate taxes. But I did that.
In other words, there's an assessment put on the building, and that's a singular assessment
Correct.
for that particular improvement. Okay.
What varies is the cost of providing services to a one-bedroom unit versus a three-bedroom. One-bedroom unit has fewer people. As I started out describing the methodologies that are applied, the first methodology is a per capita. So the cost of service provision by the municipality is calculated both on a per capita basis and a per unit basis, depending on what service is provided or what income is generated. And so that's how the unit mix can have a varying impact on the total benefits, net positive or net negative benefits.
So on page 3, your annual net impact chart at the bottom there.
Yes, sir.
The studio has a negative impact, the 2-bedroom has a negative impact, and the 3-bedroom has a negative impact. All those are on the township.
Yes.
What goes into figuring that out?
We can look at the chart in the addendum.
Well, because basically the township is going to be providing fire services and police services. Because as far as I know, commercial trash is responsibility of the commercial industry, correct? So there's no trash there.
Correct.
Water is handled by the water authority, sewer is handled by the sewer authority. So how are those negatively impacted?
We look at the total township annual expenditures per capita. And then we determine what the number of people will be populated the different unit types. And these are the numbers that are updated all the time. You know, old methodology, new numbers apply. So, on page 15 in the agenda, shows that studio apartment, what are the numbers for studio apartment? Some population numbers for studio apartments. So we believe that, so we use the same number as for one bedroom apartments. It's the potential for overstating the number of people, and therefore overstating the municipal expenditures, and therefore understating the fiscal impact to the municipality.
And when you say the same numbers, you mean the persons per unit?
Persons per unit, you see, persons per unit, column E, number rows 6 through 9. The numbers of persons per unit for a studio, we have it as 1.36, one bedroom 1.36, two bedroom 1.75, three bedroom 2.37. And we use that to calculate the total population in the complex. Once we determined that the township per capita expenditures in terms of services is approximately $275 per resident in the township. It's a very simple calculation. You determine the total number of people, the population of the complex, multiply it by the $275 per person service provision costs for the township to determine the overall potential cost of the township. Is it possible that the township, and this is an average cost analysis. It's not an incremental cost analysis. In an average cost analysis, if it's 5 people or 500 people, the service provision costs are the same. But we all know that in the real world, if you add 10 people to the municipality, the service provision costs, you have one township manager, you have the same amount of staff, and as a result, on an incremental basis, the costs will not be as great for the 11th person, for the 100th person as it would be for the first half.
And that's where I'm failing to comprehend here, because in my mind, the township staff's gonna stay the same whether there's 500 people living there or 1,000 people living there.
Understood.
The services with the police department aren't going to change. Maybe eventually may go up 1 or 2 new hires, but
Service calls will increase. Things
service
like that.
calls and say fire department. Other than that, the township's not providing anything else because everything else is separated out from the township.
Yes. So
So
the average cost, using an average cost method like this tends to overstate the expenditures.
Okay.
And therefore understate the positive fiscal impact.
So is it your testimony that the positive fiscal impact of the township of the apartment development that we're talking about in this report is actually greater than what's shown in your report?
It is potentially higher because this is calculated on an average cost basis, not an incremental cost basis.
On page 15, you also show the township revenue.
Yes, sir.
And do you do that to compare it to the expenses?
Yes.
And what do you find there?
We find that, overall, the township revenues are $8,000 a year greater than the cost of service provision. And again, on an incremental basis, that if the expenditures were calculated on an incremental basis rather than an average basis, that positive fiscal impact would be substantially greater.
Same issue as on the expenditure side.
on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, the revenues are what the revenues are. Because the revenues are calculated in a different fashion. The revenues are real estate taxes. Doesn't matter if there are 5 people in the complex or 100 people in the complex, the real estate taxes are based on what the assessor places the market value of the complex. What in the earned income tax is actually based on the minimum income necessary to pay the rent, the market rent that was determined. Is it possible that the income tax will be higher because the incomes are higher? Absolutely.
Well, it would have to be more than possible. The only way it wouldn't be more than possible is if everybody had the same exact income, being the baseline income you have to be able to afford the unit, correct?
Correct.
So there's really no doubt that the income from the earned income tax would be higher than what's stated in your report. Is that true?
It is very likely that would be higher, yes. We have a tendency to try to not understate the expenses and not overstate the revenues. I don't like using adjectives, but it's a more conservative approach. Now, the franchise fees and other types of revenues are really more on a per household basis than a per capita basis. So that is truly going to vary by the number of units. The interest earnings, pretty marginal numbers, but again, it's based on the revenue generation for the municipality, the real estate taxes, and its impact on interest earnings for the municipality as a whole. So it's not a significant amount, but it's still an income generator for the township that we have to account for.
Going back to page 4, did you also look at the tapping fee implication for the apartment project?
Yes. And again, while it's not the township directly, income generation to the township or a municipal authority or the school district, it all goes to affect the economic health and fiscal health of the municipality and the residents. And so we did look at that. And the tapping fee at $4,850 per EDU per equivalent dwelling unit would generate $1.8 million of tapping fees for the Lancaster area sewer authority.
I gotta ask a question, how that relevant? Because township has nothing to do with the sewer. Has no impact. Classes tipping or tapping fees have nothing to do with the township.
You can't really separate out the impacts, the overall impacts. I'll ask Mr. Samuels a question about that. You can't really conduct a fiscal impact study and not consider that as a factor, even if it might not directly affect the township. Is that a fair statement?
Right, because the sewer authority is a service provider to the residents of the municipality. So the healthier the sewer authority is, the more they're able to provide sewer capacity for whatever development the municipality approves. And that's all that it is.
I will agree with that, but the sewer authority is going to raise their fees regardless. I mean, their fees go up usually every couple of years. It doesn't matter who taps in, their fees go up. So those tapping fees have no impact to me as a resident of this township.
Understood.
That's why I'm saying it's kind of irrelevant to this discussion.
And that might not be an unfair characterization on the tapping fee side, but I think Mr. Samuel's testimony is he can't really conduct a fiscal impact study without at least looking at that.
Yeah, but that affects the potential resident of those more than it does the municipality, the township. I mean, the tapping fees are figured into the cost of renting the unit. The Colebrook would put that into their calculations there, so that affects the Colebrook and the residents of those units. And the same thing is if they raise their rates, the authority, that does not benefit the township. It affects Colebrook and it affects the residents again. And that sort of gets back to the same thing with the school district. I mean, we hear about property taxes being too high, but when you look at the property tax, it's not the municipality, the township, or even the boroughs, and even the city of Lancaster. It's the school district and the county. But you know, we pay our taxes to the entities because that's part of society. But the thing is to say that you know, this benefits the township per se. To benefit the township, leave the land in agriculture because there's no services that need to be provided.
I would submit that you're suggesting that the fiscal impact is here to show a benefit to the township. That's not necessarily the case. There may be a benefit to the township, there may be a benefit to the school district, but the MPC requires that this information be provided so it can be considered by the zoning hearing board in the context of the application. It includes the impact of the proposed use on the sewer facilities, on the schools, on the public services. So you can't look at it and say, well, this isn't relevant because it doesn't impact the township positively or negatively. That's not the issue. The issue is what are all of the impacts on those issues as articulated in the MPC?
Right, but the MPC is saying we have to look at those issues. The issue is, in my opinion, not the fiscal impact on the municipality. It's more the fiscal impact on the applicant and people who would reside in there.
The MPC still requires you to consider the impact on the sewer facilities, and Mr. Samuels has to identify that in his report. The board.
It says the impact on sewer facilities, water supplies. Yeah, is this proposed development or any other development, the impact on the sewer system? Can it handle it? Do they need to upgrade the facilities to handle it?
But this is the fiscal impact component of that, and there's also a community impact component of that. Mr. Samuels isn't testifying to the community impact. That's a different part of the analysis.
The school district does have a community impact financially. I mean, being the best of all worlds here, there should be nothing but one-bedroom apartments, which would have almost no impact on the school district. So it is community-based when you start talking school districts and you start talking doing 3-bedroom apartments. So, I understand that he has to consider this stuff into his proposal, but for us, when we're making a decision to either approve your application or not, sewer has no impact. Water has no impact. I will say the school does have a little bit of impact, but the fact that all of the township provides is police services and fire services. And road services, that should be all that we should be looking at. Yes, I understand you need to figure everything else in, but from our point of view, since those are the only 3 things that the township provides, really, that's all we need to look at.
Well, just to clarify a little bit, the township provides more than that, but mandatory from the standpoint of safety. You have your police, your fire,
And your road service.
and even EMS, and then road services, winter maintenance, leaf collection, all those things add to the cost of the township.
Leaf collection. I don't believe they take care of the apartment complex, do you, for leaf collection? Since that is their traffic zone. I mean, they'll plow the road over down road.
Can I just make
That's
a,
it on the end of the place.
can I just make a suggestion, just for purposes of maybe moving this forward? I mean, the NPC does speak in very general terms about services, and I would sort of err towards allowing the testimony. It's certainly fair game for cross-examination. And follow-up questions, but you know, being that the NBC does speak very generally in terms of the services, I would just err inside of that.
Well, that's in the analysis, you're just
Right.
putting it on the table, saying, you know, what we're looking at. I think Mr. Hampton and I are basically on the same.
Yeah, I mean,
So, give anything else, Mr. Hampton?
No, that's it for now.
You also,
Or do you have any questions at this point?
Not right now. I'm saving my questions.
And back to Mr. Nagel.
you also looked at the projected assessment and did an analysis on that.
We looked at, four, recently constructed apartment complex. We had the assessor assess them, what assessor?
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, your microphone, for some reason, the closer you get, it does get a little louder, so.
That's fine.
And when you go on the police, reference page,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Okay. That's on page 5, where we summarize the assessment plans on 4 different apartment complexes. They range from $85,000 per unit to $99,000 per unit. The $99,000 per unit were on the smallest complex with 72 units. 44, actually the smallest at 85. And then there were the others at 258 and 489 units were 92 to 95,000, which is placed pretty much the average assessment for our calculation purposes at $92,000 a unit. Again, you know, in the desire to not try to overstate the revenues or understate the expenses, but try to be realistic about, you know, what might happen. And so at $90,000, $2,000 per unit, we also looked at what the real estate taxes per unit would be, and they're relatively constant across the surveyed complexes. So that's what we utilized as a projection of real estate taxes, the $92,000 per unit assessment.
Did you look at capital expenditures as part of the analysis?
I'm sorry.
Did you look at like township expenditures
Yes, we did.
as a result of a proposed apartment complex?
Yes, and as we had, you know, spoken about, looking at page 15 of the report in the addendum, gives a pretty good breakdown of the expenditures again were on a per capita basis. $275 on average per resident, township expenditures. When you eliminate certain types of expenditures, pass-through expenditures, capital reserves, things of that nature. Transfers from reserves into operations should occur on an annual basis. So we calculated the expenditures based on $275 per person, based on a population of 582 people in the complex. And on the revenue side, as I said, $92,000 per unit assessment generates $34,000 in real estate taxes on an annual basis to East Hempfield. Their income tax is the big tax generator for the municipality at $115,000. And then various franchise fees, like cable TV franchise fees, other types of, small areas of revenue, interest earnings, where we got the $167,000 of total annual revenue, indicating a positive impact on the municipality at approximately $8,000 per year. As we just discussed, the revenues are probably understated. The expenditures are probably overstated since they're done on an average basis rather than an incremental basis. And so the $8,000 per year township annual net benefit is probably an understatement from what would actually occur.
Did you look at the net impact on the township in terms of revenue minus expenditures? Is that part of what's on A15?
Yes, that's that $8,000 per year that I just said was the revenues are probably understated because the earned income tax is probably understated and the expenditures are probably overstated, the cost of the township, because it's based on an average person rather than incremental.
How about this? How about a similar analysis with respect to the school district? Did you do that?
Exactly the same. And, on the pages, the interim pages of the report, there's tremendous detail as to how each of these numbers are calculated, how the budget numbers are analyzed, how the revenues are calculated. We do that for the school district as well, and that detail, is on pages, 12 and 13. And the narrative for each of these, there's a reference to cell numbers. And the cell numbers are reflected on pages 15 and 16. These Excel spreadsheets, printouts. So when something says, look to, cell D34 with regard to the school district, you look at page 16 in the addendum, go to column D, row 44, and that cell shows the assessment for the apartment complex would be $34,132,000. That's that $92,000, per unit.
So page 16 is the similar analysis to 15, but for the school district.
Correct. The real difference in the analysis is the number of, it's not the population, school district costs. Expenditures don't vary with population. Within an apartment complex, it varies with the number of school-age children that are created who are enrolled in the public school system. But I said an analysis of the American Community Survey publication of the Census Bureau indicated that 88% of the school-age children who live in East End within the Hempfield School District, 88% of them go to public schools. Only 12% go to either private, parochial, or homeschool. As opposed to some municipalities, like Lower Marion Township and the main line right outside of Philadelphia. It's populated by a lot of doctors and lawyers, and only 60% of their school-age children attend public school. And so the impacts are dramatically different. When only 60% go, the school districts don't have to spend a lot of money to educate more children because there aren't going to be very many more children coming out of new development. In Hempfield Township, in the Hempfield School District, 88% are publicly educated schools, so it's it's more of a burden on the Hempfield School District than in other areas.
So, but that's not true. It may be relatively true for East Hempfield, but Hempfield School District includes all of West Hempfield Township, which is growing tremendously with housing development.
So, but what's happening is, as I said, still, if you're in a district where only 60% of the children go to public schools, the public school doesn't have the same burden as in a municipality where 88% go to public schools. It's still wildly for apartments because the number of school-age children in apartments is declining. And these numbers were generated by the Center for Urban Public Policy by Rutgers University. But when they study Census Bureau numbers to determine the number of school-age children that are being generated. In Montgomery County, when they did their study, their conclusions were there were far fewer children generated than the Rutgers numbers. But we stick with the Rutgers numbers. If we were in Montgomery County, we would tend to use Montgomery County's study, but we're in Lancaster County, so didn't think it appropriate to use the Montgomery County numbers, especially since the Montgomery County numbers would indicate a much higher positive benefit of apartment development because of the low number of school-age children living in those apartments.
After the analysis of the fiscal impact of the school district on page 16, you have a certification in your report. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, because I'm a state certified appraiser and I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute. And the work that we do has to conform to the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. If it be appraisal or valuation services or other consulting services, we still comply. And then combined in one of the requirements is that we have to provide a certification, we have to certify to a variety of elements to make sure that we are providing a professional service that is not biased in any way. And also that we have to certify that we're competent to provide the service that we're providing. And that is one of the things that we certify. It says I certify that I have the knowledge and experience necessary to render an opinion of market value competently. I have read, understood, and satisfied the competency provision of the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. Now, there are assignments sometimes where we don't feel we're competent. And our obligation is to tell the client that we don't feel we're competent. And if they say, well, we still want you to do the work, I said, well, our secondary requirement is that we have to tell you how we will achieve competency, either by bringing in other people as part of our team to provide the service, or how we will become competent. In this case, since I've done this so many times in the past, I have the adequate level of competency to provide this service, and I certified that.
And that pertains to the fiscal impact studies that you prepared?
Yes, that's correct.
With respect to A43.
A43.
Which is the single-family detached development fiscal impact study.
Yes, sir.
Is the methodology that you used to conduct that study the same or similar to the methodology you used for A42, the apartment fiscal impact study?
The methodology is exactly the same. Per capita, per household, proportional valuations, and also The only differences are the inputs. The inputs as to base price, the sale price of homes, the income that's necessary to support that purchase price. The number of residents for each dwelling, the number of school-age children for each dwelling varies from the apartment analysis because necessarily so different types of households occupy different types of units at different price points. The other thing that was significantly different is that in a for sale analysis, such as single family homes, there is an initial real estate transfer tax impact, positive benefit to both the township and the school district. And that impact combined is over $770,000, what we project based on our projected sale prices of the home.
Is that reflected somewhere in your report?
It's reflected on page 4.
So, having said that, it's a positive benefit to both the township and the school district. But how does that figure? That's some great negative numbers for the single families. Wouldn't it be the township benefit to build single family?
Well,
Especially with the 700,000.
well, that is a one-time.
Yeah.
And also on turnover, whatever the rate of turnover is, we did not analyze that.
So, being the fact it's one time, wouldn't it again be better to do a 55 and older single family? That way there is no demand on the school district.
Yes, except to the extent, again, as I said, the school district, most of their revenue comes from real estate taxes. The township, most of the revenue comes from earned income taxes. When you get into an active adult community, if there is not earned income taxes paid on investment income, then what happens in those communities, they tend to start out relatively young. And the average age increases over time. And as that average age increases, the number of people working decreases, and the earned income tax will decrease over time. We see that a lot in independent living, and so it's a constant type of change, if there is such a thing, but it's a predictable variation that the earned income tax will go down over time.
Are there any other differences between the apartment analysis versus a single family analysis?
The real difference is that the school district, the impact on the school district is a negative for the single family detached development, and it's a substantial negative. We've estimated at $360,000 a year.
So
Is that shown? I'm sorry, Mr. Hanson, just one quick question.
quickly, I understand how it can be a negative for the school district, but is there really any negativity for the township?
There is not, no. It's still positive for the township.
Thank you.
Is that number you were referring to shown in 843?
Yes, it is. The negative for the school district is shown on page 17. Positive for the township is shown on page 16.
Page 16?
Yes,
So similar to the apartment fiscal impact, the multifamily fiscal impact, you have charts, page 16 and 17 are similar to what we saw in 842 on pages 15 and 16.
yes, they're basically the same charts with different numbers to reflect apartments versus single-family detached development.
So make sure I'm looking at the right numbers. The positive gain for the township would be approximately $35,000 a year.
Correct.
Negative for the school district would be $361,000 plus gain.
Correct.
Thank you.
So is your testimony that the overall fiscal impact on the township of the apartments is neutral as compared to a single family development?
With regard to the township, the single-family development is slightly more positive than the apartments. With regard to the school district, there's a $700,000 swing in benefits. $400,000 positive with apartments to a $300,000 negative for single-family detached.
Fiscal impact of the township. Keeping the school district out of it. Township would be better off if there were single family.
That's correct.
In terms of the difference between apartments, multifamily, and single family, including townhouses. When you say single family, does that include townhouses?
Does not.
In terms of your fiscal impact analysis?
Correct. We did not look at townhouses. So I don't know what the average assessed value of the townhouses would be. I do believe the population would be slightly smaller. I do believe that the revenues would be down some, but since I didn't study it, I don't know. I tend to believe that townhouses or apartments would be more compatible with the existing apartment complex, and not that they're adjacent to each other, but that the gateway, the pathway to the 27 acres is through the apartment complex. You can't ignore that. It could negatively impact the ability to sell single-family detached homes on the site because you're driving through an apartment complex to get to your single-family home. But we did not study that. That's just my general impression.
From, Engel brought this up, from your perspective, there's enough townhouses to be built on that property for the current township density, I believe is 5 per acre. Make it fiscally responsible for the property owner to do that.
It would be, I can't answer the fiscally responsible. Is it financially feasible? But I believe it's financially feasible.
Let me rephrase that. Fiscally feasible.
At 5 units the acre?
Yeah.
I don't want to answer a question with a question, and I apologize for this. what affects financial feasibility really is value, the cost of the land. If the cost of the land is zero, yes, it is possible. If the cost of the land is $50,000 a unit, then that changes the feasibility.
But the current owner owns the property,
Yes.
so there would be zero cost. Part of why I think the applicant is here, because it's used not provided for, well, it doesn't exist, but it's not financially based on earlier testimony for them to build additional apartments or townhouses, wherever they can, because there wasn't enough units per acre.
Yeah, I did not study that, so I didn't look at the economics of that.
As a follow-up to Mr. Hansen's question, and in reference to your prior testimony that Mr. Hansen was asking about. With regard to the legality of the township's ordinance, isn't it your opinion that a developer will always choose to build the single family over the multifamily in the context of this ordinance?
Yes.
I have no further questions for Mr. Samuels.
Before we go to you, can you go for a 5-minute break?
Please.
Thanks, we'll go over the record. Okay, if we can go back on the record.
I didn't know you.
I want to state before we go back on the case that I didn't say in the beginning that, and beside Craig, who's on the board, Craig Kyle and Judy, there's nobody else on Zoom. So just so the record reflects that. Okay. You back on the record? Spider.
Okay, thank
Floor is
you.
yours.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Samuels. I want to turn to Exhibit A42, which is your fiscal impact study and cover letter. And some of this was covered in your direct exam, but I want to make sure that our record is clear. It's my understanding you based your fiscal impact analysis on 371 apartment units. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And you are aware, aren't you, that the applicant has proposed 308?
I'm not aware of what was not when this was produced.
Okay. And according to the date on your report was prepared in July of 2024, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we are now, I guess 3 months out from that date at October 17th. And at this point, you haven't amended your report to bring it in line with the number that's actually being proposed by the applicant, correct? Okay. Early on, you provided testimony about the chart that appears on page 1 of your report. And specifically, it's my understanding that the mix of units and the rent charged for those units, your testimony was that came from the marketplace. Is that correct? Okay. So these are not numbers that came from the applicant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to review the testimony provided during these proceedings by the applicant as to the actual proposed mix of units and the rent that would be charged?
Oh, I don't recall. I remember reading his testimony, but I don't recall there being a mix or a rent.
Okay. So you wouldn't have reviewed the testimony from the property manager who testified that the rent for a studio apartment would be in the range of $1,000 to $1,200 per month?
I probably would have read it. I don't recall, but we analyze the marketplace and we make our determination independent of whatever our property owner is saying.
Okay, so you wouldn't have been, even if you'd known what the rental charges were, or the proposed mix of units, you wouldn't have included that into your analysis?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is completely hypothetical, correct?
It is based on our analysis of the marketplace.
Okay,
Hypothetical is something that doesn't exist and is just presumed for the purpose of an analysis. But in this case, it is our analysis of the marketplace, and we have support for it. And you can disagree with it, that's not a problem.
I think you've answered my question. Thank you. Turning to page 2, you have a chart, which I believe your testimony was, this is a chart of other apartment complexes that represent the marketplace. Is that correct?
That's correct, because it's complexes that have been constructed in recent years.
Okay.
Because
Is there
it's instructive for us to look at older apartment complexes.
Okay. Is there a reason why you did not look at any other apartment complexes in East Hempfield Township?
I don't know. I
Okay.
can't answer.
And in fact, you have 3 apartment complexes in Manheim Township, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And are you aware that the applicant has other apartment complexes in the area?
if they're newly constructed, then we would have looked at them. But, we wouldn't look at existing, 20, 30, 40-year-old apartment complexes. It's not, it's somewhat instructive as to what a new apartments would be, but it's best to look at, what new apartments are charging because they're reflective of the cost structure, for construction and the cost of land.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question. All right, turning to page 3 of your
I'm going to
report.
object. You have to let the witness finish the question. If he was mid-answer, he was still answering your question. It wasn't like he was going on a lengthy diatribe to answer your question before you cut him off.
I would disagree with that. I think unfortunately, the structure in this hearing is you've allowed your witness to testify at length and to go deviate quite widely from what the question is. I'm asking the witness to answer my question, and that's all I need at that point. He wants to backfill and provide further explanation and cloud the issue with his answers. So I think I'm fully within my right to tell him that he's answered the question and move on to the next one.
And I would object to your characterization because sometimes a question that you ask might require further explanation.
Then you can
Answer the
ask that
question you've asked.
on redirect, but this is cross-examination. So the questions are limited, and I would ask that the witness stick to his answers to the question that's being asked and nothing more. Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Samuels, turning to page 3 of the report. And looking at the middle chart on that page. It's my understanding that you've done an analysis of the real estate tax increase for both the township and the school district, correct?
The chart shows the real estate tax increase based on our analysis of the assessment that would be placed on the property upon completion.
Okay, but again, it's limited to the township and the school district, correct?
The chart here is limited to the township and school district.
Okay. Is there a reason why you didn't analyze the impact as it relates to the county?
I didn't believe it was relevant.
Okay. Are you aware, Mr. Samuels, that the millage tax rate is higher for the county than for the township?
No.
So I just have to ask, what impact does the county tax have on the township?
Well,
Again, the question on the food and water and everything else, what does the county impact the township?
I don't know that it does, Mr. Hanson. I'm just trying to ask questions to the witness as to what went into his analysis. I would agree with you that, the code's very vague in terms of what can be considered, but it does certainly speak to public facilities. It's not limited to the township. So it may or may not be relevant, but in terms of the analysis that this witness did, I think it's interesting that that there's only certain factors or certain entities that are examined in a vacuum. And in this case, we've got the township, school district, and LASA. So certainly there are other public entities that would be impacted by a development of this type. Certainly the county, the water authority. There's other, public impacts that are not included in this report.
And I understand, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, again, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but going along with the motion that I made earlier, me, the classes are all water authorities are all and go through counties are all.
I'm not making an argument that it is relevant. I'm just asking the question as to what's in his report.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Samuels, turning to page 4 of your report. And again, this is A42, in which you are looking at the proposed apartments. And in particular, I want to look at your analysis about what you call sinks and dinks, okay? Single income, no kids, and dinks, double income, no kids. Can you tell us what the source of this information is in terms of number of children per bedrooms and per housing type?
It's the Rutgers University analysis of population in apartment complexes.
Okay, and do you know what the age of that information is? How old is it?
Getting old. I have to look, it's either 2006 or 2016,
Okay.
2006 it appears.
All right, so the information you're relying on in this report is 18 years old.
The more recent information would indicate fewer kids than the older information.
Okay, and would you agree with me that housing trends have significantly changed between 2006 and 2024?
Yes.
Okay, and would you agree with me that it is there certainly is more of an issue with finding single family homes as opposed to with children, and that more children are actually going into apartments because of the lack of availability of single family homes?
The data and studies that have been done don't indicate that.
Okay. So turning to page 6 of your report, just to follow up, it's my understanding that your demographics and this information that you cite to, this is included in that paragraph, talking about the Rutgers study published in June of 2006. And am I correct in my reading of this, that the data that comes from that publication was actually gathered between 1990 and 2000?
Correct.
Okay, so even though the data published in 2006, it's actually much older than that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And would you agree with me that that information was also, that from that Rutgers study was also limited to only one state?
I don't believe so.
You believe that's a nationwide study?
If I recall, I don't have it here with me tonight. They indicate for New Jersey and for Pennsylvania.
Okay. So as we read through your report and look at your analysis, am I correct that you have given the opinion here tonight that assuming there are 371 apartment units, that would only generate 27 children of school age in those apartments?
Pennsylvania.
Okay. And again, that's based on data that was published in 2006.
Yes, and new recent data would indicate fewer school-age children.
Okay, but you don't cite to that more recent data, do you, in your report?
I don't.
Okay, so we don't have any ability to fact check that tonight because it's not cited in your report.
We can't fact check it tonight, but I'd be glad to provide it to you.
Mr. Samuels, would you agree with me that farmland and open land actually helps the taxpayers and helps the township and the school district? Because those landowners are actually paying more than they require back in services from the township and the school district?
Yes, it's possible that it doesn't create more benefit. I don't believe in either case, but if they only pay, it's like $19,000 a year, let me go back. and look. They can pay $19,000 a year. So that's between the township and the school district. And I have to look, I don't remember if this is under Act 319 or not. I would assume it is, but if it isn't, under Act 319 it would be less. But so the maximum benefit, even if you assume the township has to provide zero services, then the benefit would be to the township $1,000. But either of the development scenarios that we presented creates a much more benefit to the township than just open.
Okay, but by your definition of more benefit to the township, in one scenario, it's less than $8,000 a year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and in the other scenario, single family homes, it's $36,000 a year, correct? Okay. And I think you cited too earlier the work by Dr. Timothy Kelsey. Is that correct? Are you familiar with his work?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And are you familiar with the publications that he's done through the Penn State Extension?
With some of them, not
Okay.
all of them.
All right. And have you had an opportunity to review his report titled Fiscal Impacts of Different Land Uses, the Pennsylvania Experience in 2006?
No,
I will represent to you, Mr. Samuels, that in that report, Dr. Kelsey cited that residential land generally costs local taxpayers, while commercial, industrial, farm, and open lands helps taxpayers by paying more than they require back in services.
I wish I could make such gross generalizations without being attacked.
Okay. But again, you relied,
Can you read that again? Because I didn't catch a lot.
sure. The quote is residential land generally costs local taxpayers, while commercial, industrial, farm, and open lands helps taxpayers by paying more than they require back in services.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, you did testify that the work of Dr. Timothy Kelsey is someone in your field of fiscal impact studies that you would routinely rely on.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I rely on, I would have to, before I can agree or disagree with a study like that, I would have to read the context of the quote. And I'd have to read the study to see what the assumptions were on the basis of that analysis.
Okay, thank you. All right, so turning to Exhibit A43, which is your fiscal impact study, assuming there are single-family detached dwellings. You would agree with me, would you not, that there's no proposal for single-family dwellings on this property?
I would agree.
Okay. All right. And again, I think the board member has asked you this question. This assumes a single-family development that is not age restricted, correct?
Correct.
So would you agree then, if this was an age restricted development, a 55+ community, that your analysis would change as to the impact on school districts? Certainly.
Correct.
Okay. So I do want to turn back to your testimony from August. In here in July, I'm sorry, wow, it's been 3 months. And specifically, Exhibit A44, which was a report that you testified to back at that hearing. Do you have that in front of you?
We don't really- Oh, man, I'm sorry.
We have it. Okay, and just to refresh everyone's recollection on this report, A44 was a report that you authored regarding construction densities. And do you recall that? You have that report in front of you?
Yes,
Okay. Would you agree with me that you testified at the last hearing that the surrounding municipalities, the municipalities surrounding the township do provide for densities higher than 5 units per acre?
yes.
All right. And would you agree that you also previously testified that a developer's choice to construct single-family housing over multifamily housing is a result of economic profitability to the developer?
No,
No, you didn't testify to that?
I didn't.
Okay. Well, isn't it fair to say, I mean, it's been your testimony, correct, that when given the choice based on the current ordinance, a developer will always choose to develop single-family homes?
That is not what I said.
That's not what you said? Okay. Is it your testimony, did you sit here tonight, that it is more profitable for a developer to develop multifamily units under the current ordinance?
I've never discussed profitability. I've discussed the value of land and the competitive nature of the marketplace. And given the densities that are permitted within this zoning district, that a developer who would like to build apartments and would bid on a parcel of land would be outbid by a single-family developer. So the apartments would never get built because a single-family developer can afford to pay more for the land. And usually property owners sell land to whoever will pay the most for the land.
And wouldn't you agree that that's really a profitability analysis by the developer?
It is not.
Now, you previously testified that properties in Lancaster City are currently being developed at a very high density, ranging from 15 units per acre to 733 units per acre. Do you recall that testimony?
I would have to look. But
Okay, go ahead. If you want to
much
turn.
higher density.
Okay. And would you also agree, and I believe this is in your report, that the density in Penn Township for new development is 9 units per acre?
We're going to get in our reports, so that they can find out, otherwise I would have to,
Sure.
before I can answer that, I have to look extensively through the report.
All right.
It's on the second page.
Yeah, there was one property in Penn Township that was built to 9 units per acre.
Okay. And continuing on that page, you also have a development called the Foundry in Manheim Township at nearly 21 units per acre.
Correct.
Okay. And would you agree with me that Lancaster City is actually adjacent to East Hempfield Township?
To the east.
Okay. And would you also agree that Manheim Township is a township that is adjacent to East Hempfield Township?
I have to look at a map to be sure, but it is to the north of Lancaster City.
All right. Do you know whether Penn Township is adjacent to East Hempfield Township?
I would look at that.
Okay. All right. And when you looked at did your analysis of looking at other townships, did you go back and evaluate other existing apartment complexes in East Hempfield and particularly look at the density of those complexes?
We did.
And would you agree with me that there are other apartment complexes in the township currently that exceed that 5 units per acre density requirement? At 5.
Five. Could you point, I can't agree to it, if you can point to those.
Well, I'm asking based on your analysis and your report and your testimony just now that you did look at other complexes in the township. Are you aware that there are others that exceed the 5 units per acre? If you need a moment to look at your report, that's fine.
Thank you. Yes, I see that on page 10 of our report. That there have been 2 apartment complexes that have been constructed in recent years, and that is 2018 and 2019. And the densities are greater than 5 units to the acre. And that's because they're part of larger developments. So,
Okay, so just to put a fine point on it, those 2 developments be the Willows at Landisville and the Courts at Lime Springs?
correct.
Okay, and would you agree those densities are 6 units per acre and 9 units per acre?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Willows at Landisville and the Courts at Lime Springs,
That's the only one.
6, 9. Okay. All right, if you just give me a couple minutes, I may be done.
Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do that one. Thank you.
Mr. Samuels, have you ever had an opportunity to speak with any representatives of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Samuels, the township solicitor asked you about the fiscal impact, the two fiscal impact reports you proposed. And the fact that you did not revise those, despite the fact that during the last hearing, the applicant presented a 308 unit plan that doesn't match the 371 units that you used in your fiscal impact reports, correct? Is in your testimony that those reports didn't need to be revised because those fiscal impact reports apply to any number of units that this board would consider awarding as relief in this case by adjusting on the percentage basis that you explained during your direct testimony?
Right.
So there's no reason to revise the reports. Referring to Exhibit A42. Page 1. The township solicitor asked you about the testimony of the site manager for Colebrook as being that the rent rate for a studio apartment would be between $1,000 and $1,200. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
And whether the numbers you have on page 1 of A42 came from the marketplace. Is it fair to say that your marketplace number of $1,180 rent for a studio apartment falls within the range of the testimony of the Colebrook manager?
Yes.
The solicitor also asked you about the age of the Rutgers study information. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
And I think you indicated that stated that the report was from 2006, correct?
Correct.
Does the age of the Rutgers information change the reliability or accuracy of your impact studies, in your opinion?
I think it does somewhat. What it tends to do, again, is tends to overstate the expenditures and understate either the positive or negative fiscal impact. Because there are several other studies that have been done that would indicate that, especially the number of school-age children that are generated in apartments, new apartment complexes, is materially less than what the Rutgers data indicates.
So would I understand correctly that that means that in terms of the impact, your reports would be conservative?
Well, again, I don't like using adjectives. What I would say is that it tends to understate the positive fiscal impact for the school district and for the municipality on the apartments. And it will have marginal impact on the fiscal impact related to the township.
The township solicitor asked you about the impact of farmland.
Yes.
Is there a varying impact potentially on farmland if you compare single-family homes to multifamily? development.
Overall, the development of the land generates far more positive impact for the school district, which I believe positively affects township residents in depressing the level of real estate tax increases that would be necessary on an annual basis. And with regard to the township, both scenarios, single family and multifamily, both indicated positive impact in multiples of what it was for the agricultural land. Because the present real estate tax benefit to the township is $1,000 a year. Whereas the positive net benefit of the the apartments to the school district, to the township, is 10 times that. And the positive to the township for the single family scenario is 35 times what it is for agriculture. So the implication that must be because the agricultural land creates more fiscal benefit over these two development scenarios is an incorrect assertion.
Do they have varying impacts in terms of the use of land or sprawl?
Nothing. And that's the uncalculated tax on everybody. Leaving it purely agricultural and forcing development to other locations increases costs for everybody. It's not that it eliminates. It might eliminate a problem for East Hempfield, but it causes a problem somewhere else. It creates a societal cost, and it's the cost of providing infrastructure is more expensive. Roads, water and sewer infrastructure becomes more expensive the further out people have to go to find affordable housing. The longer their commutes to work, it means there's more gasoline consumption and the cost of the commuting, the cost of maintaining cars on longer commutes, the cost of societal costs related to air pollution generated by those cars. There are other costs in trying to match the location of employment hubs to where people are living. Transportation management authorities have sprung up all over the state, and it's because of the mismatch in the location of employment to where housing is and the disparate locations of housing versus.
I'm going to object to this testimony. I mean, it goes beyond the scope of his fiscal impact study. I think we're getting pretty far afield, and this is not relevant to the analysis.
You asked about the impact on farmland on cross-examination. I'm just asking a follow-up question. You yourself stated that if there was something that the witness had to elaborate on one of your questions, I could ask a redirect question on it.
No, well,
That's the question I
he's not elaborating on your question. He's just testifying
He certainly,
at length on something that's not relevant to the study.
his initial testimony was certainly a direct answer to my question.
Right, and he should have stopped there.
And I think that you're right that the initial part of his answer did sort of address what she asked. I sound like you're getting into something that I don't know was part of any of your studies. And,
I'm asking that the initial answer to the question be included.
okay,
Otherwise, I have no objection.
okay, I think that's a good place to stop it.
With respect to Exhibit A44, Mr. Samuels, the solicitor asked you about the courts at Lime Spring, which apparently has a density of 9.28 acres, as referred on page 10 of your report that's marked as A44.
Yes,
And the Willows at Landisville, a density of 6.12 per acre, correct?
Correct.
Or overall density of 6.12.
correct.
Those densities couldn't be developed for multifamily under the township's ordinance today without some kind of zoning relief. Is that fair?
That's correct. Given the densities that are permitted, the only way you get any kind of additional densities is when it's part of a larger development that is non-residential. And it's part of the approval of a master plan. But again, not an isolated site, you wouldn't be able to do this.
I have no further questions.
If I may, okay, I just have a couple recross. Mr. Samuels, you testified just now that the number of children in new apartments is material less than what's stated in the Rutgers report. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes,
What is your source for that information?
Montgomery County did a study of number of school-age children in new apartment construction.
Okay, and is that study cited on A49, your bibliography?
Let's see. Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, and am I correct? That's a study from 2012?
Yes,
Okay, so that study is 12 years old.
correct.
Okay, and so again, that study wouldn't reflect the realities of today.
The only way to get more recent data would be to work with the school district and owners of apartment complexes to do primary research.
Okay, thank you. You testified just now, and this is in your report, and I want to make sure we understand you. My understanding is that the development of land generates more of a benefit to the school district and depresses the level of real estate tax increases that may be needed on an annual basis. Do you recall saying that?
Potentially.
Okay. And am I correct? Your summary report, your 2-page letter of July 17th stated that the apartment development would permit the school district to actually lower its real estate tax millage rate. Is that your position?
In theory, all things being equal, an increase in net revenues over expenses would change the budgetary needs of the school district, and yes, it would be possible.
Okay. And as I understand it, that benefit to the school district would be about $414,000 per year.
Correct.
And you believe based on that number that the school district could lower the tax millage rate?
All other things being equal, they could.
Okay,
Mr.
All right.
President, can I interrupt you?
yes.
Mr. Samuelson, since the legislature passed Act 1 of, I don't know what year it was, this school district has not gone through a budgetary process where they have not increased the real estate tax with all the development that has happened over the past years. And in most years, they have gone to the state and asked for a higher percentage than that. So with that as the history with the school, how can you say that they wouldn't, if this development goes through, whatever density, that they wouldn't continue on that same directory that they had in the past? I mean, the county and the school or township have maintained a relative stable real estate tax base, but the school district continuously increases.
If they're increasing, it's either because of greater single-family development, or it's because of other types of budgetary needs. It isn't a purely fiscal impact response.
That's okay. I just have one thing. If you just get. One final question, Mr. Samuels, just turning back to the Montgomery County study that you cited from 2012. Would you agree with me that that study only looked at homes in Montgomery County, not Lancaster County?
Correct, and that is why I did not use it.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
So, since the applicant has referred to several different apartments around the county for density, and you brought up Lime Springs and Willow at Lansville. Neither one of which is what I would call a garden style apartment, which is what the applicants are. For comparison only for comparison for our benefit, I would ask the town to provide the density for Park City Apartments. That used to be the old Columbia Press. And keep me out of it. What the density of those are greater.
We'll take a look at it.
It's on the Park City Apartments is on it.
Yeah.
Park City was built in 1969, it's 4.43. Based on the zoning, they couldn't be built the same way today.
Never mind, for the list here. So for the record, Woodland Hills is at 8.19 units per acre. Park City is at 12.43 units per acre. So,
Anything else? Okay. Maybe we have anything else this evening?
I've been asked that exhibits A40 through A45 and exhibits A49 and A50 be admitted into the record.
They will be.
I have an objection. Yeah, A41 was previously excluded by the board during the July hearing. An objection was raised. That is the report on why the owner did not build, and I raised an objection. The objection was sustained. It was found to not be relevant. So as such, we did not do any cross-examination on that exhibit. And I can give you the citation in the record if you need it.
Which report were you?
A-
which exhibit?
A41.
It's listed in it's listed in the transcript.
It was not offered. I mean, there was testimony given, but then it was excluded as not relevant. So I would object to its admission.
Can you give the site to the record?
Sure,
please?
page 296, lines 18 to 25, and 297, lines 1 through 4.
That was an objection to a question, not to the exhibit, to one of the questions that was covered as part of the exhibit, as far as I can tell.
No, it was to the report. And the testimony. So I mean, the problem is, the board sustained the objection on relevance as to the testimony.
On one question.
No, it was the testimony on the market conditions. It was on the report.
My recollection of it was that there was, and I mean, I'd have to read back, looks like I had to read back pretty far to get the full context of it, but that it was to a particular question.
Well, I have no objection to the admission of the balance of the exhibits. I would suggest that we suspend this particular exhibit until everyone has a chance to read the transcript more closely.
And have you, at the end of each of the previous hearings, offered or requested admission of the exhibits, or, because I was thinking that you were waiting to the end, but.
No, I did. I have.
He has offered for every exhibit so far. And the newest one would be 42, 43, and 50, correct?
And 49.
The transcript is not marked as those being there. It's marked as them being referred, but not admitted in the index to the transcript.
I think that there were several questions about exhibit 41, and there was, and my suggestion is that I think there are probably 10 pages of testimony on this exhibit, and for the board to accept it and give it the way it deserves. You want to questioning on that?
Well, the problem is the objections were sustained at the time of the hearing. So there are 10 pages of this. I would, again, recommend a deferral on the admission of that exhibit until everyone's had a chance to read the transcript. I mean, I don't see what the hurry is. We're not closing the hearing tonight. I think it makes sense to defer a decision on this until the next one.
I don't agree with the characterization. The objection that was sustained was to a question, not to the exhibit and not to the whole line of question.
So in terms of 41, good, just was important as I asked about why the project was rolled out. Right. And that's where it goes to answer. So I think it was completely relevant for this case.
Well, unfortunately, that was not the determination previously. It was an objection to the whole line of questioning.
Counselor, you keep saying that, but I don't agree with that
Okay,
characterization.
then, again, I don't want to fight about it tonight. I have no objection to admission of the balance of the exhibits. I would recommend that we defer and we can consult with the solicitor for the next hearing. I don't see that there's a rush. You're not closing the hearing tonight.
Excuse me, my notes show that, when Mr. May was offered to have them accepted, I said that they would be, exhibits would be accepted at the end of the hearing, which is normally what we do in this case. So with that being said, I will continue that assumption that we will look at the exhibits at the end of the testimony, and should, after we look at the testimony or the transcript, if what Ms. Piper says is correct, my notes do not show one way or the other. All my notes show is staying, and if it was a question of that that was part of 41. Then, we'll take such notice at the time, but my notes just show I try to be very thorough with keeping track of which exhibits are offered. And so that at the time we can look at it. So with that, Jason, we haven't accepted any of the exhibits at this time. We have acknowledged them and indicated that we would take proper notice and make them part of the record at the appropriate time at the end of the hearings.
That was my recollection, was that they were not, the board had not actually, admitted
Right.
any exhibits. I may be wrong, but I'm not seeing on the transcript from July where the exhibits were, where you made a request to have the exhibits admitted and the board made a decision on that.
But I believe if you look at the transcript, you will see prior instances where exhibits were offered and admitted, but you can go back and look at it. And that determination can be made as we move forward.
If that is the case of looking at it, I would still argue that following our normal procedures on any case is we do not accept. We acknowledge them, so the record shows, but we do not accept the exhibits until the end. And in which case, then we have applicants' exhibits, contestants of the township's exhibit, and we put them all on the record at one time.
I'm not trying to go out of order with your procedures, Mr. Chairman. Just as a matter of practice, I think that's what I've done. And I think there are instances where exhibits were admitted, but you can go back and look at it and we can figure that out as we move forward.
And maybe part of that is my terminology and, when I respond to your statements. With 41, we'll look at that one closer, but I will tell you that all other exhibits, to my knowledge and notes, I don't see there are any issues that would prevent them from being made part of the record.
Very well.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't see any reference in the transcript to any exhibits being admitted. So I would agree that deferring that till the end, till the conclusion of the hearing makes no sense.
No, you have nothing else tonight, Mr.
No, thank you.
Ms. Piper, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. With that, it's my understanding. I'm sure I can speak. Yeah, November meeting for this case has been requested to be deleted from our schedule. Is that correct from both parties?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the November meeting, which would have been the 21st,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Third Thursday is canceled. Sure, it's canceled. You don't have to show up that night. You don't have to put that in. Right? Okay. With that, I want to thank everybody for.
We should just announce that the December meeting is the 19th of December. The third Thursday. And the applicant waives the 45-day requirement in hearings based
Yes.
on your request.
Yes.
Okay with that, if there's anything else to do in the order. We will grab the ninth meeting and meet in December. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.